Welcome back to the Westside Theatre here on Broadway. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the shows that I want to see. And I've only picked a few this year, and the one that I want to see was Old Jews Telling Jokes, which is on at the Westside Theatre, as I said, just off 40 at 3rd Street. And it's a beautiful, intimate theatre with two phenomenal performers. Audrey Lynn Weston, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
Nice to see you. And of course, Bill Army, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. And I've had a fantastic afternoon. Thank you for having me, first of all, on a Saturday matinee, sold out house, which is thrilling. I think it's the only sold out show I've seen in the last week, and I've seen 45 shows. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And I'm not surprised because it's very different, and it's short, and it gets straight to the point, and it's all killer, and there's no filler from the second it opens. Congratulations, guys.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you for coming.
And of course, the thing is comic timing, and you've got it in bundles, Audrey. Congratulations.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. One thing I think Bill and I have both learned from this show is that if the audience doesn't hear what you say, they don't laugh. So that has been a huge lesson, I think, for all of us, because it's a very intimate space and all of our audiences are very enthusiastic and so happy to be here, but there's so much going on that there have been some moments when if they don't hear it, there's not so much laughter.
It's rule number one: be heard.
Be heard.
I do always have the greatest admirations for stand-up comedians, especially those who are in the clubs, because if you're competing with alcohol, I mean, you're just never going to win. When people are talking, it doesn't work, does it?
It does not. It does not. So we've limited the alcohol, I guess.
Personally, I think we should sell more drinks. I mean, that's just me. Actually,
up the ticket price, give them out free. How about that?
Oh, that would work out. You know, it's funny, actually. There are some nights where I think to myself, I think this audience is drunk. It's very, very rare, though. It's usually during like a Thursday night or something like that.
Some Saturday nights, too.
Oh,
they're
I'm told as well there's a tipping point, though, where they've got to be sort of merry but not too drunk, because then if they've had too much to drink, they're riotous and they can't concentrate.
Frankly, these jokes, I mean, they're about, a lot of them are about family. And so, you know, I'm sort of being flippant about drunkenness. But yeah, I think what's best about these jokes is most of them are old jokes or riffs on old jokes. And people like to come and hear us tell them. And I mean, they're still funny to us, so...
And they are riotous, gut-wrenching jokes, which is what I love, a real punchline. Because it seems like entertainment and comedy and TV have gone away from the punchline. They sort of just do real life, I walked down the street and then this happened, and people titter. But these are about real big laughs.
They are. They are. We have some doozies in this show, and quite a few, I think. Yeah, I think there's some pretty incredible punchlines, if I may say so.
It's a lot of fun, actually. This is something I've sort of noticed in doing the show, and I've said this, I think, in a few other interviews, is that these jokes, which are so old, have sort of shaped what I come to know as American humor. And it's very interesting, because I never would have attributed it to Jewish joke-telling. And I still hear it in sitcoms, you know, that very formulaic setup punchline, and how that's riffed on. And it's fun to get to do a style of comedy like this, because, you know, when you're an actor, you don't really tell jokes as much as you engage in a comedic situation comedy. And it's the situation that's funny, not necessarily the punchline.
You've both got great comic timing, as I said earlier to Audrey, but also you've got great delivery and presence, and you've got to sort of act out these jokes, because they are story jokes. Each and every one of them is part of some bigger picture.
I mean, the best thing that you can do with comedy is to take it seriously, and you can wink at the audience, but your wink usually, for me, has to be in service of the not knowing. And you always want to keep yourself as innocent as you can and let the audience be the one to figure it out.
The trouble with this show is it's called Old Jews Telling Jokes, but you're not old. I mean, you're both delicious in your own way.
Thank you. Well, part of storytelling, and certainly jokes and stories about family, is that there are normally some children in them or young people, and so we sort of fill in the blanks in terms of those delicious, familial, horrifying situations.
I mean, I'm 86. I've just had incredible work done.
You have. Could I have the number for your surgery? Can they do anything about hair?
Absolutely, of course. And that's, I mean, my hair's on. No, it's been a lot of fun to be the young ones, because you learn a lot from Marilyn Sokol and Lenny Volpe and Todd Sussman, who have been doing it for so much longer, frankly, than you and I have been alive.
They're masters. They're really masters.
What I loved about each and every one of them, as is the case with you two as well, you're all so very different, but you're all so similar, physically, comedy-wise, delivery-wise, and that's so wonderful to see big personalities doing what you do best. And may I say, this is beautifully cast, this show. It's 90 minutes of gags that frankly could get boring if they were just gag after gag after gag, but you do bring them to life, and you start imagining the scenarios that you're setting up, and that's your job, isn't it?
It is, and we've had. It's hard to believe that we've been running the show for 8 months now, and because it's such an intimate setting, and because the stories are so delicious, I don't think that any of us have really been able to settle back into the stories or the storytelling. In fact, it's such an intimate space. The audience is really right on top of us, and they know if we take a step back, they're there with us, and so we take it very, very seriously.
It's very interesting. You know, we've now been doing this for about 9 months, and I mean, when you include rehearsals, and Audrey did some workshops before with it, and I think that we've really, as is the case when you work on a play, you become a family, but it's been interesting to see us all sort of meet in the middle somewhere, and somehow like each of our different energies seems to not only bind together but feed each other as well.
And then I asked myself, why you sat here, 5 people on Broadway doing this sellout show. They could have had anybody. There's 5 million actors out of work. There's a billion comedians who can't get hired. Why you?
I don't have an answer for that. I have absolutely no idea, but I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm not even Jewish. You know, I'm sort of honorary. I think that this show means that I've converted to Judaism, and as my father would say, converted to Judaism purely for the jokes.
They made a big mistake. I'm waiting for them to figure it out. I'm just pleased as punch to be here. It's been a really a real gift, particularly because, you know, none of us are stand-ups. We are actors. They could have hired stand-ups, but they chose to hire actors. And this is the first experience I've ever had where, you know, we've all done very serious plays, and this is the first bizarre experience I've ever had where I feel like I'm doing something incredibly important because I am helping to make people so happy, so many people so happy 8 times a week, which is just a rare thing.
I think I mean, not to get schmaltz or anything, but it's most rewarding when we have an older audience. I mean, an older audience who have come out from Jersey or from, you know, their home in New York, and they sit, and usually the laughter isn't necessarily the loudest that day, but everyone's having a good time, everyone's laughing. It's very sweet to be a part of it.
I was sat on row E just there, and next to me was a guy who couldn't have been a day below 97, and he had his ear things. I've never seen them before, but it's like an electronic thing where he gets to hear you louder so he could hear the jokes.
It looks like a stethoscope.
Exactly. I was sat there, and then you start doing sort of the filthy stuff, and there's a little fruity language in this, isn't there? A little bit of Anglo-Saxon. And he laughed louder at those than he did at the clean ones, and I thought, there's proof that if you have good gags, it doesn't matter what the language is or what the content is, people will find funny.
I think the dirtiness of some of those jokes, and I sort of was saying this earlier, I think that the dirtiness of some of those jokes is what makes them successful is the innocence with which we tell them. Nothing is more exciting than hearing your grandmother say the F word.
Every once in a while, it's funny, I'll say to Bill during a show, I think they're not so fond of young women being naughty today. I think they don't think it's right for their granddaughter to be so inappropriate. But
of course, Audrey has joke after joke of oral sex and cunnilingus.
I have some.
Connie who?
No, I won't say it again.
I think I went to school with Connie Lingus. She was a nice girl from Ireland, I think.
Very good girl. Yeah, very good girl.
The disadvantage to having such a funny show, great show, intimate show, is that when you get the sourpuss who doesn't find the joke funny, you get to see their reaction. You can't please all the people all the time. There's going to be one in an audience of 300, surely.
I mean, that's definitely true, but I think that, again, like, we didn't write the joke, we're just saying the joke, and it's a lot of fun to tell them over and over again, and eventually, if we're having the right kind of fun, even the prudes have fun too.
And some people just don't laugh loudly also.
If I find a joke funny, I'm more likely to try and remember it, so I haven't got time to laugh. That's the thing.
That's the best thing when we're done with the show and we go out and people will say things like, I had the best time, I can't remember a single joke. And then, of course, our response is, come back.
Yeah, and indeed they should, because I think you could laugh again and again and again. And I think a different show at a different time on a different day, you would get a different reaction. I mean, this was a good crowd for a Saturday matinee, wasn't it?
Fabulous. It was a real hearty group of people. They came to party, that's what we say.
And you know, every single audience really is different. It's different. Even when you have matinees, Saturday matinees tend to be a pretty rowdy crew anyway, but what made them laugh this time was very, very different from what last Saturday matinee was like. And that's just really interesting.
Do you know what I love about this show as well? At a time when theatres are putting in big productions with amazing lifts that are bringing scenery up and scenery flying in and elephants and giraffes walking on and flashing lights and all this, you just have a man sat on a piano and 5 actors who are knocking jokes out the park. It's extraordinary how diverse this is to a lot of the other Broadway shows, but equally as compelling. And bravo to the producers, because there is a risk in just doing something beautifully simple.
Absolutely. And it was, I don't know exactly how Bill feels, but I was pretty terrified to begin with, because when you're doing a real play, you have a character or characters to hide behind. And although we do act out a lot of these jokes, it really is just us on a stage with people very, very close, hungry for us. But it's part of the magic, I think, is that it's a very intimate piece and space, and it's just us. It really is just us talking to them.
And I didn't feel terrified because I had 4 other actors to hide behind. No, and punchlines. But actually, I think that I always felt really confident about it because our producers and our creators were so nurturing and open-minded, and we had a wonderful director, Mark Bruni, who really whipped the show into shape and kind of made it sing and knew what jokes were right and what jokes were wrong. And we learned that very, very quickly when we got in front of an audience.
Yeah, there's no hiding, is there? And one of the things I love about the show as well is the speed in which you keep it going. You can't lose focus for a second, because sometimes you will flash of a light and you're straight back on again. Seriously.
Right. Yeah. There's one moment I have in the show where the granite countertops joke. I walk right off and then I come back on for my monologue, and that there are a few turnarounds that are quite quick.
It makes it extremely exciting when we have an understudy go on, and we have great understudies. But I mean, the speed at which scenes happen and transitions happen, I mean, I wouldn't envy anyone who had to understudy this show.
And the trouble with it as well is you can't just pad, because people are going to know you're padding. These jokes are so well rewritten. And what I mean by that, the granite joke we talked about, we won't give it away. I've heard 15,000 different versions of that over the year with different punchlines. But it was so beautifully tightened up. And that's the thing about a show like this. You've really got to work those gags to make sure they're not sort of going on just to fill.
Right, right. And that, I think we had we only rehearsed for about 2 weeks before we moved into the space. We had a full week of tech, which was I mean, it was a really incredible week of tech, and then we had 3 weeks of previews, and during that first week of previews, 4 songs were cut from the show. We all had a song. There were, I mean, and the show kept changing so much that week that none of us really remember it, because the order was being changed. It was a different show every single night, and that was really humbling. It was very humbling.
So have you lost your 11 o'clock numbers then? Have they gone now?
Oh, my 11 o'clock number didn't see the light of an audience. No.
Is it because it was rubbish, or it just didn't make the cut?
I think that when we were deciding the kind of jokes that would come into the show, we realized that the actual music of the jokes is, or what makes the show work, is that to add more jokes rather than song. And we do have one song still in the show, which Lenny sings, "I'm Not a Well Man." And for one reason or another, that number still works in the show. And it was sad because there was another good number that you guys did that we worked a lot on. But, you know, it just didn't work with what we were doing.
And that's theatre, isn't it? Some of the greatest stuff gets cut and cut and cut, and that's how you get it down to something this slinky.
And that I do remember, is that we could feel it not working during that first week, and so it wasn't a surprise to us. And Mark crafted everything so impeccably.
And we all wanted the show to be good, so none of us took it. I mean, you can't take these things personally when something isn't working. All you can do is give it your all, hope it works, and then if it doesn't work, just not be wedded to it.
There isn't time, because you have to shed it from your memory, or else the next night you're going to go on thinking that that's coming up and you're going to miss the cue. So,
talking of technical things and mistakes, there weren't any today, and there's one very clever scene that you just mentioned in the doctor's surgery where you play the doctor and you're working to a TV screen, which is so clever. I mean, it's the only bit of set you've got, and thank God it worked, because it's the most beautifully crafted bit of comedy, and precision timing by you particularly, because you're closing doors that don't exist.
Well, thank you very much. I remember when we were rehearsing it in tech, I was like, I can't see the television. And the director came up on stage. He said, no, just do this. And he did it with his arm. And I said, I'm still not getting it. Will you do it for me? And he's like, it's sort of like this. And then, of course, we spent all day teching that. And eventually it was all in our bodies. And over time, I mean, we have an amazing stage manager and crew who is so much part of the music of the show and helps the show to stay on track and keep moving. And in that particular section, because that's where tech and actor need to be able to be in sync.
And then I'm thinking about the fact there's only 5 of you on stage in it. Does that make it a more magical experience? Because I'm guessing if you're in a show with 40, 50 people, you sort of get to know some and you don't get to know others. In this, if you fall out, it's going to come on stage, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we're very, very lucky. We are this small, at times dysfunctional, loving family that really has to depend on we have to depend on each other on stage and off. And yeah, and I think that is part of the magic, is that we are small in number but mighty in spirit.
It's actually amazing how we've all come to trust each other, and we really, really have, haven't we?
We have to.
Well, and again, and it's not surprising because, I mean, I've done emceeing, I've stood on stage and told jokes, and if you go down that road and you hit the cul-de-sac because you can't remember the punchline, you're in a pretty deep hole, and I can't imagine anything more terrifying for you in this show because you've got 4 other people and 300 people staring at you.
I mean, the image feels like, just tossing a ball, and we're all tossing the ball, and over the 9 months, it feels like we're tossing the ball faster and faster and faster at each other. Now it feels like we're just throwing the ball up in the air and running away, and we know someone else is going to catch it.
Congratulations. I loved every moment of this show. It's very rare I don't take a quick nap during a musical, because let's face it, let's be honest, in a 2.5-hour show, there's often filler scenes, aren't there? There's often bits where you think, well, they just put that in so that we don't go home early. In this, there's no time for that. It's 90 minutes straight through, no interval, which means you can't get drunk halfway through, which is a slight downside.
That's true.
But can you imagine serving Manischewitz in the middle of this? Honestly,
Just on the language within this show, I grew up listening to Howard Stern, and what it took me back to, I don't know whether either of you listened to him, but he often does impressions of his mum and dad having conversations, and he's got this brilliant ability to sort of mimic how they talk. There's a certain delivery, isn't there, in this show, and it's very, very identifiable. How long did it take you to get that affectation?
Anyone who lives in New York City for more than 3 years becomes Jewish.
Right.
And I actually do think it's a very specifically New York tri-state area thing, although you're not from New York. I mean, you're from California.
I grew up in Los Angeles, but my mom's parents were survivors, and my dad's parents were great joke tellers, and so it's kind of in my blood, but it is definitely a New York experience. Yeah, so I grew up with.
And I think Mel Brooks said that once you are that and part of that community and you feel you own it, you therefore have the right to make jokes about anything, and literally anything.
Oh, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I'm always a little shy when it comes to making certain jokes, but I've heard that, and I deeply admire comedians who are able to do that.
Guys, thank you so much for talking to me, Audrey. Great to meet you.
Thank you
Brilliant
so
show.
much.
Such a charismatic performance. And again, a beautifully slinky performance from you, Bill. Congratulations. Come and see it then. Let's give the big plug. It's on here at the Westside Theatre, which is on 407 West 43rd Street, which sounds a little off-Broadway. It's about a 2-minute walk. That's all, basically, isn't it? Audrey Lynn Weston's here, and Bill Army as well at Old Jews Telling Jokes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.